It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Never want that to end, especially on a Friday. Welcome into another Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith, joined as always by Alan Saunders, and joined on a Friday of a game week by Steelers DB Derrick Bell. What's going on, pal?
How we doing, fellas? How we doing? Sorry to miss such an eventful show last week. I was locked in. I was locked in for my deathbed. But to be fair, y'all probably wouldn't want to be on here. A, because I could barely speak without coughing every 5 seconds. But then B, I was also going to pick the Eagles, and that usually doesn't go well because I know people don't like when we pick against the Steelers. So, but yeah, I mean, it was definitely it was a rough week, but I'm feeling a little bit better, so I'm happy about that.
A quick little DNP. We're lucky we didn't have to put you on IR and miss 4 weeks. Yeah, I don't know what we would have done, but good to just get you back after one. Alan, how we doing?
Doing good. Smitty and I both did pick against the Steelers last week, and I think we're both pretty darn close to the final score.
Yeah, I said 26-16 was mine.
And I think I was like 27-14 maybe. I think I was pretty close. I don't remember. 28. Yeah. I was all over it. I don't remember, but yeah.
Everybody was in the mix. Like even on my other show around the 412, Tyler said 23-13 Eagles. Like everybody was right in that.
Everybody was pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But anyways, all right, I want to dive into this game, but first and foremost, somebody that we already knew wasn't going to be playing, but also now not going to be on the roster even. Diontae Johnson waived by the Baltimore Ravens today. They'll hit waivers 4 p.m. Monday, can be claimed by any team, including the Pittsburgh Steelers. They couldn't trade for him, but they could claim him if they want to bring him back. Do we believe this is at all in the realm of possibility? We know the trade of Diontae Johnson, not necessarily a football move that the Steelers decided to move on from Diontae Johnson. Now, would they bring him back because of circumstances potentially changing with the George Pickens injury, how dire things are in the receiving room? What do we make of this?
Well, I mean, let's start to cut this up a little bit into some pieces. First of all, I don't think George Pickens' injury is that big of a concern. I think he probably would have played this week if this was a playoff game, and maybe even if there was regular rest on the other side of it. You know, if this was Sunday, 3 in a row, I think he probably would have played this week too. So I don't think that's a big concern, with the one exception that, you know, if he does happen to re-injure that hamstring, you're now looking at George Pickens out for the year. So like hoarding depth at the position is not necessarily a bad idea. But I don't think it's an issue where they're thinking like they might not have George Pickens next week, let alone going forward as things stand right now. But like you said, this was not about Diontae Johnson, the player. This was always about the personality fit in the locker room with the team, within the team concept. That can change, it's a different team than it was a year ago. There's a different starting quarterback. There's a different offensive coordinator. I don't know how much those were factors in the lack of fit between Diontae Johnson and the Steelers. Also, he's now had the benefit of going to 2 other teams and seeing what things are like other places. He may have a different perspective on how happy he would or would not be to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers in these circumstances. If I was the Steelers, I think I would have to like a waiver claim is dicey. You have to cut somebody to do it. You have to make a spot on the 53. And they don't exactly have a lot of fat on their active roster right now. So it's probably going to be a move that like hurts somewhere else at least a little bit. And you don't get any chance to kind of feel him out and see like how okay he, like, obviously this is a guy that literally refused to play for the Baltimore Ravens. Like if he came in and we saw like Mike Williams came in and was like wide receiver 4. If that's the case, is he going to refuse to play for the Steelers too? Like, I don't know. You're taking a pretty big risk by cutting someone to add him at this point. I do think if he clears waivers and then could be on the practice squad for a week, or at the very least, you could have a conversation with the guy about, hey, what are you going to be okay with? What are you going to be happy with? And what are you going to be unhappy with? I think that reduces the risk factor pretty significantly. It also would make him cheaper by a little bit, not by much. Not that really matters.
Derek?
Yeah, I mean, this has absolutely nothing to do with the on-field performance or skill set of Diontae. I mean, I don't think that me, you, Smitty, anybody really needs to talk about like the depth of the amount of talent that the Steelers have on the roster right now. It's really just about like locker room fit and how that kind of dynamic shakes out. Like you mentioned, it wasn't like an on-field reason that they moved on from Diontae. It had nothing to do like with the contract or anything like that, with his age. Like it was just strictly about like how bad things got in the locker room last year during some rough patches. And like the other thing about this is like that I think of it is it also is a question about like they wanted to move on from Diontae from the way that I understand it, because like they wanted to kind of separate him and George, I think, to an extent, to see if they could maximize like George's talents on the field, but also like keep him maturing on the right track off the field. And I think for as good as George has been on the field this year, I don't know that like the maturity question has really been answered. So I would be pretty hesitant about like adding Diontae back into the equation if you could think that that could negatively impact George's maturation as a person or off the field too. So to me, it's really just about like what the locker room dynamic is. I don't really have a strong opinion whether they should or shouldn't claim him or anything like that. The roster thing for me isn't really even like a talking point or like the finances behind it. It really is all just about like, what do the people in the room feel about him, like from the coaching staff, like filtered down through the players, and like what would the dynamic between all of those guys, assuming he comes back, is he going to be welcomed back with open arms? Is he going to have to come in and immediately explain himself for like his decisions, not just like since he left the Steelers, like what's transpired with the last two franchises, but what transpired like last year that led to like both parties kind of souring on one another? So there's just a lot of questions. I don't really know that like we have enough information to answer those. It's a lot of speculation, but yeah, I mean, there was a reason both sides moved on. The only thing that I would add, like on the flip side of that, is like both sides probably are or should be pretty desperate. I mean, Deontay's like costed himself a major payday in the offseason, like with what he's done. I mean, he went from being like one of the top free agents for next year's class to like now pretty much he needs to go somewhere to like take a prove it deal to rebuild his reputation. And then the Steelers, like, I think you look at just the depth and the passing game aside from George Pickens is pretty much DOA. So, like, that's a question of it, too.
You mentioned
to go back to to go back to the thing about George, I think there's like some couple angles there. Like, yeah, I mean, they could not want to bring Diontae back because they feel like that could mess with George's continued maturation. They could also they could have just been hoping that George would grow up without Diontae being here and say, well, that didn't happen. So I guess that one, yes, Diontae wasn't the problem, like you could look at it that way too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that, bring up that as well, the other angle to take on that. But the other thing I was going to bring up, do you think this is a type of situation where like internally you have to have a conversation, not only with like front office and coaches, but also like the leaders on your team to get a feel for how they would feel about the addition prior to putting in a claim or signing him if he passes through?
I think so. I mean, from a team building dynamic, I would want to, like, if I'm, for example, like if I'm a guy like Cam Hayward, if I'm a guy like TJ Watt, especially Cam, because like he's older in his career, like Cam is playing at like in my opinion, a defensive player of the year level right now. I would want to be involved in that conversation. Like, hey, what do you think about this type of move? Because Cam's running out of time, right, to get a Super Bowl. Like he's 35 years old. Like he's seen better days, right, than he has ahead of him. So like my thing would be like, I would want to have a conversation with him. Like, is this worth, like, do you think that this would be the difference between like us winning a specific playoff game against Buffalo, against Kansas City? Is this a risk that you think you would take? Not that you were going to like go ask like Cam Hayward or TJ Watt or even like Russell Wilson, who to my knowledge, doesn't really have he doesn't have any type of relationship with Deontay Johnson. But, the coaching staff, the players, I would want to get certain voices maybe involved. But like at the end of the day, like Tomlin, we know like he has an extremely long leash with players. Like we've seen it. We've seen it this year. We've seen it over the course of his career. Like when he's ready to give up on somebody, usually things are pretty bad. Like you look at the AB situation. I'm not like trying to make all of these like a one-on-one type of thing, but you look at the receivers they've moved on from in the past, like Antonio, Claypool, when they traded him, like there's a reason why they do it. And normally like those guys don't really come back. So like really it just starts off like, I don't even know if Tomlin would even like, if he doesn't want it to happen or if he's not on board with it, obviously those conversations are a complete non-starter. So I don't know, man.
Alan, anything to add in that respect in terms of, getting a feel of the players here
Yeah,
as
I
well?
guess it really goes back to like the last thing I said. Like, was trading Diontae Johnson outside of football because of the concern about the wide receiver room and the impact on George Pickens primarily, or was it just because they were just sick of this guy and done with him? Because if it was the first thing, I can see bringing him back in this situation. If it's the second one, I think once you make that decision, it's pretty hard to undo it. Like I don't think there's if the decision to trade Deontay Johnson was made because the Steelers just were done with Deontay Johnson the person, I don't see how in 9 months that changes.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. I guess the only reason that I based off everything that I've heard, the conversations that the three of us had, and knowing some stuff as well. The only reason I'm leaving the door open a little bit is the situation that the wide receiver room is in general. That's honestly where I'm at with it. But okay, no Diontae Johnson tomorrow. I almost said on Sunday, but Saturday game for the Ravens. Also going to be without Nelson Aguilar. Still see about Rashad Bateman. So that wide receiver room where they're at. That's why I want to start with the Baltimore offense going against the Steelers defense here and what we feel like are the keys to this. Derek, Al and I had kind of started to dive into this yesterday, so I guess I'll start with you. When you look at this Baltimore offense, no one needs to tell you where it starts and where it ends for them in terms of what stirs this strength. But going against the Steelers defense, obviously they've matched up once already. Is Tomlin devil magic can continue to happen in Baltimore? How are you viewing this one?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that the Steelers defense played extremely well in that first matchup. I mean, full stop. One of the things that's kind of interesting, like you look at Lamar's numbers, like by like man versus zone splits. In terms of like zone EPA, like Baltimore's the number one passing offense in the entire league. They see zone coverages on like 72% of their snaps. They're number one by a significant margin, especially like when you get into like the split safety looks and stuff because of how good Lamar is at throwing in the middle of the field. But one of the things that the Steelers did is like they didn't play. I mean, they mixed in some man coverage for sure, but their zone coverage was so good because like the second level of their zone structures were like excellent. Like Queen had a fantastic game. Minka Fitzpatrick had a fantastic game. Obviously, Peyton Wilson gets that miraculous interception. And that's kind of like the formula of what you're going to need. You're going to need the pass rush to obviously dominate. That's kind of the key to pretty much like every single Steelers matchup. Like that is their trump card. They have to dominate up front. I do think that without Deshaun Elliott, we're going to see more like Minka Fitzpatrick in the box again. I would anticipate. But that's one of the things I'd be looking out for is like, can they first and foremost, like try to get Baltimore a little bit behind the sticks, especially like without some of these wide receivers. Rashad Bateman's really their like outside press coverage type of player. So that's like, a big deal, especially like as you get into third down, if you want to play some man coverage stuff, like you could get into that. But the big things is like, with Lamar, it's just, you got to make sure you plaster in the scramble drill because he's going to hold the ball a long time. And I thought that they did really an excellent job of that in the first matchup, just making sure they cloud those zone windows. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not really truthfully. I mean, it's definitely a possibility that Lamar goes off because, I mean, he's the MVP front runner. But I feel pretty confident in what the Steelers defense has put on film against him to where they can at least hold up their end of the bargain.
Alan?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Steelers defense matches up well against the Ravens. I think their ability to come at you in pass rush waves helps. I think the experience and maturity of their interior defensive linemen helps a lot too. They kind of do a really nice job of not letting him get free. They've used their linebackers, which are much upgraded this year, as sort of like multi-purpose tools. They use them against the run. They use them to corral and not let Lamar get free and get extra yardage with his legs. I love their game plan against the Ravens on defense. I'm not worried about the Steelers defense in this game at all, really. Like I just think I mean, they haven't played Lamar in a ton, but they have a better game. Like I'm at the point with as well as they've played against him that until Lamar and the Ravens really go hang one on the Steelers, I'm just going to assume this defense is going to hold them mostly in check. The last, nobody has scored 20 points. Nobody has scored 20 points in the last 7 games, something like that in this rivalry. Like, I think the Steelers defense got this.
Yeah, Derek, I do want to
2019 Steelers in Ben Roethlisberger's final regular season game in 2021 was the last time anyone scored 20 points in this series, and that's one time in the last 8 games somebody scored 20 points, and it was exactly 20.
I remember that. I was literally just going back through and watching some of those games. Well, highlights of those games, not full games. Derek, I want to circle back to you for something real quick because we talked about this because of a question that we had. Obviously, feel like the upgraded personnel has played a role here with the Steelers' defense and their ability to cover teams differently. They've obviously continued to have success against the Ravens, though, kind of regardless of whether it was Diontae Johnson out there or Kella Witherspoon out there in 2021. But with no Deshaun Elliott, you mentioned how different that could mean Minkah Fitzpatrick's role being. What is the kind of way from the first matchup then where you had both those guys to now where you kind of have to game plan for that?
I mean, not having Elliott is obviously a big deal because, the sum of the parts thing with him and, Fitzpatrick has been a really good pairing. Elliott's played at a really high level, but, I even think like Minkah did some good things last week down in the box. Like, I mean, he's perfectly capable. And this is no disrespect to Deshaun, who's had a fantastic season, probably the best that I've ever seen him play. But just in terms of like 1-for-1, Minkah's still better probably in the box of a player than Elliott is. It's just that Minkah's so good playing in the back end that, there's a bigger drop off back there with like a guy like KZ back there. So one of the things though, too, is like Lamar, like in terms of like things that he doesn't really have like a ton of like weaknesses as a player. He's not the greatest like deep ball thrower. So in terms of like keeping a lid on the defense, it's not really like so much as like you think he's just going to go bombs away down the field on you. It's more about like those like deep overs and deep crossers and stuff like that he really likes, those deep dig routes. And he can really do, like Minkah can help kind of take some of those things away at the second level too. So not really super. I mean, it's definitely a talking point for sure, but like Alan said, man, like I'm just to the point now where like until Baltimore, I said it when we previewed the first matchup. Of course, like things are different now without Pickens, but until like Baltimore beats Pittsburgh, like the Steelers have won 8 of their last 9. Like until they beat Pittsburgh, at least from an offensive standpoint, like I'm going to continue to have full faith in like what the Steelers are going to be able to put together in order to slow them down. And in some of those other matchups, like the matchup last year that they had in Pittsburgh, like that was some like Tomlin magic type stuff for sure. Because all those drops. Yeah, whatever. But like early in the season, like Lamar didn't play well. And like I think the Steelers defense had a lot to do with that. There was nothing, in my opinion, there was nothing fluky about like the way that the Steelers played. And I think that's worth noting. I mean, like some people, this small sample size. Lamar isn't like he's missed a lot of games against the Steelers, but like the Steelers defense still plays him better than anybody else does. Like even if you acknowledge last year's game being really fluky. So but yeah, I have confidence in what Pittsburgh's going to be able to do defensively.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I do too. I don't think if they lose this game, it's going to be the defense's fault where they get like 30 plus hung on them or anything like that.
I will say this. Say this though. There is an avenue to where the final score ends up being, because here's the deal. Like the Ravens, like if you look, and it's been mostly against like bad teams, but they blew out Buffalo too early in the year. One of the things about the Ravens offense is like Lamar is a little bit of a microwave too. Like when he gets hot, there are very few guys that are hotter than he is. So there's a chance. Like the Steelers last week, they started out the game against the Eagles with 5 straight 3-and-outs. So it's like Baltimore could end up putting 30 on the board, but it could just as much be as a result of the offense not being able to sustain drives and stay on the field and just giving him way too many opportunities early in the game. Because it's like there's only so much you're going to be able to do in terms of holding up over the course of the game if you're out there on the field, every 30 seconds. You know what I'm saying? So there's an element to that I could feel like the Ravens could put up a bunch of points, but it's not necessarily as much of an indictment on the defense itself.
Yeah. Specifically, is there any matchups that you're kind of looking at here when you look at the Steelers defense versus the Ravens offense? Again, I feel like these are different, these conversations, when we have them about divisional opponents that face each other 2 times a year and all the time, as opposed to like the one-offs where you're just like circling a matchup and saying this is something to watch. But anything in particular on your mind this week?
Yeah, I mean, I thought Joey had some good reps last time out against Zay Flowers. Like they, of course, they like to shift him in the slot and stuff like that. And depending on where you're playing, like if you're playing on being like more man heavy, zone heavy, could dictate who you're going to put in there. But I trust Joey, like going up against him one-on-one. Flowers is a really shifty player, but Joey can kind of affect him a little bit with his physicality, especially at the catch point. That's not really Flowers' game. And then, like, if you're going to be playing Minka more in the box, you're probably going to be asking him to cover Mark Andrews a little bit more. Those two, that wouldn't be the first time that that's happened. So, obviously, you're going to need your best players on defense to rise to the occasion. You're going to need big games probably from not just the pass rush, but from Minka, Joey as well in the back end. But it's going to take a strong performance. This Baltimore offense has been humming all season long. It's one of the best units in the league. But I think, the Steelers have, put enough on film for me to like feel confident in their ability to at least hold up their end of the bargain.
Alan, where's your mind at in terms of any individual matchups or, unit versus unit?
I think I'm a little more concerned about Flowers than DB is. I didn't how Joey played against Jerry Jeudy, especially when the Browns were moving him around. He usually does better against bigger physical guys. Zay Flowers will probably be the smallest, quickest, shiftiest guy he'll cover all year. And yeah, I think if he's outside trying to do like traditional outside receiver stuff, there's an advantage to Porter being able to press him. But if they move him and they bring him in motion a lot, they move him in on some tight splits, I think that really negates some of that. And I don't know. I'm curious to see how that matchup goes. I'm not sure that's one that like is as obviously as a win for the Steelers as maybe it should be on paper. I also just want to throw this out here because I think it's going to matter. And so maybe I'm kind of calling my shot here. Tylan Wallace will probably play a very large role in this game with Aguilar out and with Bateman at best going to be playing at less than 100% if he plays at all. They've thrown the ball to Tylan Wallace 10 times this year. 191 yards. A touch, 5 of those 10 went for first downs. 152.1 passer rating when targeted. Dang near perfect. They don't use him very often. He's mostly a kick returner, but like, I don't know. I kind of feel like if he's one of these guys that like all his Pro Football Reference page might hit its career high on Saturday.
Oh, geez. We're about to see 2020 Willie Snead.
I don't know. I kind of have that feeling. Especially like he can have a decent matchup if it's like James Pierre. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, let me get your thought on that real quick, DB, before we switch to the other units going head to head. James Pierre, Corey Trice, if you're not going to see Diontae Jackson, how would you kind of deploy the guy opposite of Joey?
Do we have an inkling on who's going to play outside? Okay. I
think Jackson could probably play, but you run the risk of the back.
I mean, Diontae,
and then you got to play without him again.
I'm about to say, like, he misses snaps pretty much like on a weekly basis, regardless. I would probably just rest him if I could. Or if you don't think, well, I wouldn't say rest him, but like, if you don't think he can, like, go the whole distance, I probably wouldn't dress him. And I would probably just prefer to get Trice a helmet. I'm just more intrigued by Corey in general, just because of the unknown, but there's nothing really that tells me they should play him over James Pierre. You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously we know what Pierre is and he's a known commodity. The big thing about Pierre is like when he has struggled, when he's played, of course, this is years ago. It's like you could throw the ball over his head, but like, that's not really like the way that the Ravens typically like to play. It's not like Lamar really prefers to play and throw a bunch of go balls down there. You could I don't necessarily think it wouldn't surprise me if Pierre played and like you didn't really notice him as much out there, depending on the matchup, and kind of, maybe the Ravens just hunt him. That's a chance, but they could do the same with Trice. I mean, like I said, we've talked about Trice a little bit on the podcast, I feel like, in other episodes, and like my opinion of him is still the same. Like, until he gets out there on the field, as much as I like him as a prospect, like I don't have any strong opinions on like, oh, they got to play him, or I'm intrigued. I would like to see it, but we just haven't seen enough of it. He hasn't been healthy to really get a gauge for like the type of player he could be at this level. But I mean, there wouldn't be other matchups that you would say like you'd like to see him against, because I mean the Ravens are so depleted at receiver. It's not like he's going out there and facing AJ Brown like he would have been last week. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, I think that if there's like any chance that we're going to see Corey Trice play this year, this is the game. Like, I mean, not that he couldn't play against the Chiefs, because he definitely could. They don't really have great receivers either, but like, this is a team that doesn't even really barely throw the ball to its wide receivers. And, there's, I don't know. Like Tylan Wallace, it's not the world's most challenging matchup, despite the numbers I just laid out there.
Yeah, great chance for Corey to just, get some cardio, work on that back pedal. Just get used to seeing a guy in front of them more so than actually having to cover a pass.
I talked to both
but
Corey and James on Friday, and neither of them seemed like on Thursday. Neither of them seemed like they knew what was happening. So I don't know.
Okay.
Sweet.
Alan, we'll start with you going the other way now. Steelers offense versus Ravens defense. What are you looking forward to this week? How they match up? What will the plan of attack be or should be?
I don't know. There's no like what the plan of attack should be.
Well, we were asked that yesterday, I guess.
The ball really well and hope that the defense gives you some short fields. That's kind of.
I love that answer. I love the way that started off, though.
I mean, I don't really think there is a game plan that makes any sense here. I do think we talked a little bit yesterday. It was about how I don't think the Eagles are a team that you can really screen a ton. I would say that the Ravens are a team where you can get Roquan moving forward and being aggressive, and then whether it's traditional screens or whether it's just laying on the checkdowns, I think you can they'll blitz you a little bit. I think you can kind of live in check down land a little bit easier against them than you can against the Eagles. Obviously, their pass defense not good on the year, but the last 4 weeks have been much improved, starting with the last game against the Steelers when George Pickens was in the game and the Steelers only threw for 185 yards. I mean, where would you put the Russell Wilson passing yardage over under for this game? I don't know where it is, but
I don't much higher after I saw his wife's.
I'd put it about 125. That's where I'm guessing.
See, that's where I was at. I'm at 250 now because I saw Sierra's most recent post on Twitter. He's got to be motivated. I mean, after seeing that, it worked out well last time when I said this right before. What game was it? I think that maybe it might have been his debut against the Jets. So we started off slow, but then obviously played very well after that. But all jokes aside, yeah, Derek, what's your response to that in terms of the Steelers offense going against the Ravens defense here? Just run into a wall 50 times and see what happens?
Bro, I have no idea. I mean, it's not nearly as dire as it was last week because last week and I was trying to put together some notes and some things to watch for the Eagles defense is just playing just hitting on all cylinders right now. And the Steelers obviously didn't have any type of personnel advantage over them on paper. We saw that pretty much play out. I mean, the Steelers had 167 yards on offense. So, I mean, this is not as dire. I don't think the Baltimore is on that level of defense. But I mean, really the NFL, it's a matchup league. You have to have guys that you can go to in one-on-one situations, and I'm just not sure that they really have anyone on offense other than maybe Pat Freiermuth. Obviously he's their best receiver right now, but also the Ravens, one of the things that they changed is they've shifted in Marlon Humphrey into the slot, so that's gonna be a good on good type of matchup. Humphrey's a good player, so gonna need a big game from Pat. I mean, this is really a game where you would really love to say okay, let's lean on the defense. Like Alan said, these are typically low scoring. We're going to lean on the run game offensively, but Steelers can't run the ball. So it's I don't really know. Your top weapons hurt on the perimeter. You don't run the ball very well. What are you supposed to? I mean, what are you really supposed to do?
Use Justin Fields.
Yeah, I mean, what are you really supposed to do? I just don't know. There's a much longer, in-depth, detailed conversation to be had about their struggles running the ball. But even in the first matchup, they had a 33% rushing success rate, and 2 of their successful runs came with Fields in the game. So it's kind of like what you're saying. Are they just going to pound it, 25 times and just try to see if they can ground out 100 yards like that? And maybe you pop 2 explosives in the pass game, you get 2 turnovers, and that's the key to winning. That's just that may be their best case scenario offensively. One of the things that I would like to see is I'd like to see maybe some change ups in terms of how they're running the football, especially if they get into a situation where early in the game, they get a couple 3 and outs early. I know it's difficult to completely shift your run game philosophy in week 16 or whatever of the season, but maybe some more runs from the shotgun. They've been a lot better out of shotgun runs this season than they have been under center. You mentioned pounding their head up against the wall. They've been terrible on outside zone concepts, and they just keep doing it. So I don't really know. I pretty much said before last week's game that if Arthur Smith was able to devise some type of offensive game plan to where they could put up 27, 30 points on that Eagles team with the personnel at his disposal, I was he's going to get a head coaching job off this game alone. There's just there's no way. I don't know how you would do it. And I'm kind of same thing this week. Like if Art can go out there and have a 24, 27 point game, like that would be what I'd be walking into every interview this offseason with. Like, look at what I just did with these band of misfit toys, a young offensive line, and a quarterback that nobody wanted, 6 months ago. So my answer to your question is I have no forsaken clue on what they could potentially do offensively without Pickens.
Nice.
I'm
Glad
not
that
it.
we're all in the same boat here. And I hope that that's not what Arthur Smith's saying right now, as they're preparing for this game, and he just has absolutely no idea where to go with it. All right, should we get? I feel like people probably aren't feeling pretty good about the direction we're going, but I don't know. Maybe this has all been a ploy. We'll get into some predictions here, both bold predictions and our score predictions. I don't remember who started. Obviously, DB wasn't here last week, so I feel like I want to put him on the spot. He might not have.
He's got to go first. You skip a week, you go first.
Okay, DB, do you have a bold prediction already at hand? You knew you were coming on here, so.
I don't, but I'll think of something real quick.
All right, love it.
Let me see. I'm trying to think of like some like random obscure like Steelers, Ravens. Okay, I got one for you. If the Steelers are to win, the formula to winning is that they're going to get multiple turnovers off Lamar, and they're also going to block a punt. And I think it's going to be Killebrew that blocks the punt. So that's my bold prediction on hedging to say like this is their way to victory. That being said, I don't think I can pick the Steelers to win this game, and it really pains me because I freaking hate Baltimore. I've always hated Baltimore. Like, as unbiased as I try to remain in my analysis, like it makes me sick to my stomach. But I have zero confidence in this offense.
There's something about that purple, man.
Yeah,
it pisses me off.
I just have zero confidence in the offense, and like they just don't have enough like teeth in the offense or like venom to the point where I think that they can win this game without getting just a plethora of turnovers. And like Lamar's thrown like 3 interceptions all season long. Like, can you really count on Derrick Henry fumbling again in this game? Like, I mean, the defense, I think they'll play well and I think they'll keep it close. It's just, I don't know how the Steelers are going to score. I really don't. I wish I had a better, more insightful take or more optimism to add. I just don't know how they're going to score.
Get 3 points off of Boswell's toe. That's how they're going to score. I don't want a score prediction from you yet because we'll go back around the table here. My bold prediction, I will go before Alan. I looked this up to make sure that I was correct. Calvin Austin does not have a 100-yard receiving game yet in the NFL. That first one is going to come on Saturday. He's also going to tie his career high in catches, which is right now 6. Last year's season opener had 6 receptions for 37 yards, which is so unlike Calvin Austin's stat line against the San Francisco 49ers. Career high in receiving yards was 95 this year against LA. I think he goes for 6+ catches, 100+ yards in this one. Calvin Austin, the savior without George Pickens.
Interesting. I have I don't know how bold this is, but it hasn't happened a ton. It has happened this year already once, but it hasn't happened a ton. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to say that Alex Highsmith, more than 1 sack in this game. I think that he plays well against the Ravens in general. I think that he will. I think that the Steelers are going to find some ways to use TJ Watt that don't necessarily involve having him line up in the same spot and doing the same thing. Try to take it easy on that ankle. I think Highsmith might be the beneficiary of some of that. Get him some one-on-ones against what is a fairly shaky Baltimore offensive line. And I think Highsmith comes through with more than 1 sack. We're going to go with that's my bold prediction.
Can I just throw this out there? This isn't a bold prediction. I already threw mine out there, but I was also, when looking at some numbers here and where I wanted to go with this Steelers passing game in this game, I realized Pat Freiermuth has never had a double-digit reception game. He's only had 1 100-yard receiving game. He's only had 1 game where he's caught multiple touchdowns. So I'm not going that route, but I'm just saying I found that
yards. I mean, by the way, I looked up the Russ over-under is 209.5. I would be blasting that under. Like just
I'm telling you. Did you see Sierra's picture?
What do you get if you tease it down to 100? Because like that's more where I'm at.
I'm getting the sense that you didn't see Sierra's Twitter post.
I saw it. I just
okay. It hasn't changed your mind on anything for Russ's
as someone who's been married for a while, I just think the perception, after time is different than it is maybe for the rest of the world. All right, like sure, Russ is like, yep, seen it, got it. Next, keep scrolling.
Okay, all right, well. We'll see, but okay. So I'm buying into, not fully, but I'm buying into one person having a big receiving game in this one. All right, let's do scores. I'll start for this because I'll be honest, conventional wisdom for me just keeps going back to a Ravens win here, and they split the season series, which is where I would have said things would have been at the beginning of the year. But every time that I doubt the Steelers and they're coming off a loss, they end up just punching right back and proving me wrong. I think it's going to happen again on Saturday. Hat and T-shirt game. The Steelers will get it afterwards. They win this one. Alan, you mentioned 20 points hasn't been scored in this series by a team since 2020 or 2021.
Yep.
21. It happens in this one. 23-18. The Pittsburgh Steelers win.
DB, you going next?
No one wants to follow that up. I get it.
I'm a little bit surprised that you picked the Steelers. I will say just like one of the things to go around with your Freiermuth, stats. The Ravens have allowed the most passing yards over the middle of the field this season. So, if we can get Russ some like stilts or something like that to stand on in the pocket, like we may be cooking with gas.
All the time.
Maybe cooking with gas. Maybe we can hit some seam balls up through the seam. See if we can get some explosive plays that way. But I'm gonna unfortunately take Baltimore in this one. I'm gonna say
this guy.
I'm gonna say 20-13. I think last time I checked, spread was 6.5. So that kind of matches. Baltimore wins. They cover.
Before Alan goes, I want the comments, by the way, to take note of what's happening right here.
Light me up.
DB gets love on here all the time. I'm sick of it. Let's keep in mind who people are picking here.
But I just want y'all to know. I'm doing it begrudgingly. It literally, there's nothing like to be honest with you. There's only I don't get like emotionally charged up really for like Steelers games. But I freaking hate Baltimore. Like I do. I despise them. So just
I feel like that's how I feel now about. I mean, I guess the entire division. But for me, like I hate Cleveland so much. Like I
could care less about them.
Yeah, I get that too, but man, I don't know what it is. I think it's more of a fan base thing than
it's them
else.
It's them in North Carolina, man. Like those two teams, like it makes my blood.
Oh, here we go.
So,
all right, let's say a Duke podcast.
So. I like Baltimore, the city. I also think Baltimore has the nicest people in the division. If you want to like,
that's why. Yeah, that's why I said Cleveland.
You want to go to a road game? I'd go to Baltimore. I think it's the nicest stadium too. I do not hate Baltimore, nor do I hate the Ravens. I think the Ravens are a good organization. I like a lot of people that work there. I think they're very good at their jobs. I'm also like the only thing that makes me think this game will not be a blowout is just like sort of Mike Tomlin devil magic and the power that has had over this rivalry in recent years.
Never rule it out.
And I think there is something to that. I'm just not sure there's enough of that to give the Steelers a win. I'll say Ravens win 21-20. Very close game.
All right. Well, I don't know. Viewer discretion advised. If you're under the age of like 18, stop watching for a second. This is your warning. Alan, you just gave me blue balls talking through that because I thought you were about to predict a Steelers win because of Tomlin devil magic, and then you hit me with. I mean, if people are watching on YouTube, I was literally sitting here like this, and then you just
so both me and Sierra. I mean,
only this show and only on a Friday. Anyways. Appreciate. Anybody have anything else to add before we get out of here? I mean, I don't know how we should have just stopped it right there.
The kicker advantage favors Pittsburgh. That's only that if you're looking
for teams, I think all over special teams advantage Pittsburgh. Although
if you're looking for an avenue, but yeah, that's probably where it is. Tucker's been terrible this year. Boz has been excellent. So low scoring games, close games.
Coverage units.
that stuff matters. So
yeah.
There's
Notice
a path.
I did not.
For sure.
I picked 21 very intentionally. It did not have a made Ravens field goal in that total.
3 XPs though. 3
Honestly,
Justin Tucker.
Hey, honestly, like I'm not even gonna lie. Like I am the biggest Justin Tucker hater, like of all time. If
he's an opera singer,
don't care, hate the dude.
I don't think you can hate a kicker.
I definitely can. I've always hated him. And it really stems from the fact that he started his career like 49 of 50 or something like that against the Steelers. He's like been one of those guys where like when he gets up to kick, you can just leave the room and go to the bathroom because it's like this thing's splitting the uprights. So it has been like as a professional hater, and as watch, it has been an incredible hate watch this year for me. Because I do enjoy, like I genuinely enjoy watching Lamar Jackson play football. But as soon as Justin Tucker comes out there, like I'm doing all kind of spells.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, time for the Phantom of the Opera to retire there. DB, before we get out of here, tell the people where they can find you.
At Steelers_DB on Twitter and on YouTube. All my written work be found at SteelersNow.com.
There we go. Alan?
At Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok. PGH Steelers Now, the site's account, SteelersNow.com. Like, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications on the YouTube channel. Let us know what you thought of Aaron's interview on Steelers Spotlight with Steelers chaplain Ken Chevalier. I really like that. And me and Smitty postgame, I think, right? Yeah. Okay. There you go.
Somebody else will be here postgame.
Oh, no, somebody else. That's right. Not me and Smitty postgame. I don't even know what day it is, let alone what week it is.
We'll get there. Anyways, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. As Alan said, leave a 5-star review and subscribe if you're listening somewhere else. Apple, Spotify, wherever your podcast from, you'll find us there. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Do the same thing on TikTok, and then you'll find me everywhere. Zachary Smith, PGH for Alan Saunders, Derrick Bell, and myself. Thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.